Welcome to In the Arena, where politics and policy come alive. I'm your host, Mindy McAlindon, and we're diving deep into the issues, the power plays, and the strategies that shape our world. So whether you're a political junkie or just curious about how things work, this is the place to be. So get ready to jump in the arena. Joining me today in the arena is Cole Jester, Arkansas's 35th Secretary of State. He's a lifelong Arkansan from Benton, and he has an impressive background as a constitutional lawyer and a public servant. Before his appointment as Secretary of State, he served as Deputy Chief Legal Counsel to Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders, tackling major issues like foreign land ownership and big tech accountability. He's also clerked for the U.S. Court of Appeals and was managing editor of the Journal of Law and Politics at UVA Law School. Beyond his professional achievements, Cole is a devoted husband, father, Sunday school teacher, and avid outdoorsman. We are excited to hear more about his journey and his vision for Arkansas. So welcome, Cole.
Hey, thank you so much, Mindy. I'm thrilled to be on with you. It's going to be great.
It's going to be fun. So let's start. I always love to start at the beginning. So let's start with your story. What inspired you to pursue public service?
Yeah, so my dad is a logger from Gurdon. My mom is a teacher from Malvern. We were simple folks in Benton, and I really got plugged in with my church and really had a passion for helping others and a passion for just truth. And kind of what I found when I was growing up is that I felt like there's a big segment of the government, especially at the Supreme Court, who was saying the opposite, that truth didn't exist, that nothing matters, that, we really couldn't even govern ourselves. And I thought, you know what, maybe if they're going to fight us at the Supreme Court, I might want to be an attorney. And that kind of led me into the politics side. I was anguished, pastor, attorney, light side, dark side, right? But I got connected, went to law school, and have really enjoyed the opportunity that has been given me to serve as a legal counsel for Governor Sanders, working for federal courts and trying to fight for our values.
Yeah, so that's a pretty exciting appointment that you got to work for Governor Sanders. She is an amazing leader. She's an amazing governor, and she's definitely has a long runway for whatever she wants to do in the future. So what was that like, and how did that kind of shape your views of leadership?
Yeah, it's something I love to tell is that a lot of governors, when they have big appointments, they give them to billionaire donors. A lot of governors, when they have big appointments, they give them to celebrities or they give them to people who have given them personal favors. I have done none of that for Governor Sanders. I'm not a rich person. I'm not a well-connected person. She just wanted someone she thought would work really, really hard. And she chose me for this role. And I think, the only expectations she had of me is working hard and making sure that we do everything, if not perfect, as close as we possibly can. And I think the fact that, I'm young, I'm a 28-year-old guy, and that we've still been able to make a difference early should tell people, you can get plugged in and you can make a difference in this state or whichever state you're in.
That is a great reminder. Sometimes we think of age as a barrier, but you're absolutely right. I mean, you as a young person have done so much. So talk to me about were there any challenges or anything specific that you had to tackle kind of right away when you jumped in to the governor's office?
Yeah, in the governor's office specifically, there was, the first big challenge we took on is Governor Sanders asked me, she said, big tech, they are taking advantage of our kids. They are making a killing doing it, and we should do something about it. What can we do? And we talked about different options. One thing I suggested was that under Arkansas's Deceptive Trade Practices Act, that you cannot lie about your product to make money about it, and that Facebook had gone around lying. Mark Zuckerberg said to Congress that Instagram is not bad for the mental health of teenage girls. We knew it was, and the Governor Sanders said, we can absolutely act on that. And working with our great Attorney General, Tim Griffin, we initiated a lawsuit that's still ongoing. And I think it is my firm opinion that we're going to get a check from Meta and an apology for lying about their product when they knew that it was bad for our teenagers.
Governor Sanders has really fought for our kids, which I appreciate. And I just really appreciate your creativity in going after that. And I think that will make a huge difference for Arkansas and for all of our kids and for the mental health of our kids, which is a big deal. So 100%. Back in January, you got tapped to become the 35th, did I get that right? 35th Secretary of State for Arkansas. So were you expecting that? Was this like, I can't wait to be Secretary of State, or were you surprised? Like, tell me about that, how that happened.
Right. So I did our election law for the governor's office. So I definitely was kind of the go-to person, making
Okay.
sure that the election went smoothly for the governor, making sure that our electoral college duties, the governor does play a role in elections in Arkansas, making sure that they happened well. I didn't have a lot of notice. That was, one of the things. This was a quick turnaround. It's not like being elected when you have a pretty good idea you might hold this post for a year, 2 years. Instead, we had about 10 days to get together a team.
Wow.
That was the biggest challenge, and really that was in the hands of the Lord, and He provided. We have an exceptional team here in this office. I think everyone at the Capitol would tell you that now, and I am so proud to have had the opportunity to quickly turn that around. And there were those kind of special moments where you run into someone at the right time, where you can bring them on, where they can do a lot of good.
Great. And so you've been very vocal that Arkansas would have the most secure elections in the country. Can you talk a little bit about any steps that you've only been there 3 months, but steps that you've taken to kind of maintain that standard, and then any areas you think we might need to work on?
So the first thing we did is we did an election integrity review, an election security review, to do kind of top to bottom. What do we have to be really, really proud of? What are some challenges we have? I think we've gotten that back. And our number one thing where we just saw large, huge amounts of fraud every single year, enough to make a difference, was we have a petition process to get things on the ballot. And there are a lot of people who are just routinely breaking the law. On one petition, for example, there are over 5,000 people who signed it more than once. And that's just really not acceptable. We also saw that something we have to be really proud of is that we have a vote in person culture in this state. Only less than 1% of people vote absentee, which is to mail in vote. And that is our number one strength, but also it's something to be cognizant of, if that when you do mail in your vote, it is not as secure, and we need to make sure that people are voting in person. And then the other thing is, it's just exceptionally hard to make sure that your voter lists are as good as they can be, but we have to do it. We have to make sure that some people would say, having 10 people who are illegal immigrants on your voter rolls isn't enough. It doesn't matter. I think it matters a huge amount. The number should be 0. So that's kind of been our first steps.
And I agree with you. I mean, it is a privilege of citizenship to be able to vote. And I think that only we should have legal citizens that are voting. Talk a little bit about our absentee process. It's not just we don't send them out to everybody. There's a kind of 2 or 3 step process to be able to even get an absentee ballot. So it's pretty, in terms of making sure the right person is asking for the ballot and receiving it. You go to great lengths, right?
Right. So there are 4 reasons you can get an absentee ballot in Arkansas. 1, you're in a nursing home. 2, you are one, it's kind of built into the form where if you're a veteran serving overseas or a related family member. 3, you might be sick. Or 4, and this is the one where there's a little more ambiguity, you are unavoidably absent on the day of voting. We have a few requirements. One is you have to send in a picture of your driver's license as a form of identity verification. It's not as good as voting in person, but it has made a big difference. 2, you have to apply, and we actually do signature matching. So if someone signs your name to get an absentee ballot, most likely we're going to catch that is not your signature that you used when you registered to vote, and then we can investigate that further. So I think compared to most states, we do a much better job, and then we're running some legislation to make that even tighter.
Yeah, and I think I know that's kind of in the weeds a little bit, but I want people to hear the steps that we go through and how really secure our elections are. Obviously it's a big topic of conversation, election integrity, but I think Arkansas does it really, really well, even with our absentee ballot process. So let's talk a little bit. You talked about some of the ballot measures that you have been adopting to make sure and run through the legislature this year to kind of just continue to strengthen that process. So we have an initiated acts process, right, where citizens can bring something to the ballot, and they have to get signatures on it, and there are different levels. Let's just kind of explain that a little bit for people so they understand how that works, because not all states allow this, and it's very unique to Arkansas that we give the people such a strong voice in our process of laws.
Right. So let's say in the last election you had 100,000, well, you have much more, but basically you have to get a certain percentage of people who have voted for governor in the last election. It can be anyone, but that's what the number comes from. Right now in Arkansas, you need about 90,000 signatures. And if you get 90,000 signatures, valid signatures, you can put anything you want on the ballot. and the people can vote on it. And if 51% agree that it should happen, then it amends our Constitution to add or remove what they wanted added or removed. And then it goes into law. And it doesn't involve the legislature. It doesn't involve the governor. It is a complete process that starts with people going from signatures to voting on it in the ballot.
And I've heard a lot of pushback. A lot of people like what's happening with the changes we've made this legislative cycle, and some people have pushback. So can you just address the issue of people saying you're trying to shut down our voice by amending things like requiring a 8th grade reading level for the ballot titles or a shorter ballot title and those kinds can you just kind of address that real quick?
Yeah, so that's a great point. And, one thing that has happened is we have seen over time the ballot initiative process has kind of changed. And a lot of people say, how did this get on there? My job as Secretary of State is I'm supposed to be the person who verifies the signatures. And to me, a signature that is verifiable means two things. This is a real live Arkansan, and they really want this on the ballot. That's like the very basic, right? And we actually haven't really had the tools in our tool belt to make sure that was happening. I'll give you an example. Like we've had people sign the same petition over and over and over and over again, and that's actually a crime in Arkansas. You can go to jail for up to a year for doing that. But it's an impossible to prove crime because, unlike with voting, though we don't have voter ID. The Arkansas Constitution calls signing a petition a vote, but we've never had ID. Anyone could sign anyone's name. I think a great example is that there were some people who came and testified whose names were on the abortion petition, and they were pro-life people who have no idea how their name ended up on the abortion petition, but someone wrote it on there. I mean, it could be for many of your listeners, their name may be on petitions they've never even heard of. And that's a scary thought. I don't think that's what anyone wants. Instead, we want voter ID. 2, we want the canvasser to show the person what they're signing and have them read it. 3, we want the canvasser to say, hey, this is a government document. If you sign it fraudulently, i.e. for someone else, that's a crime. And we're going to have security and integrity in the process. That prevents a very real harm, which is that fake votes dilute real votes. And our job is to protect real votes. And that's what we're going to be able to do now.
And so you don't feel like any of the ballot measures that we're passing are stopping the people's voice from being heard in any way. You feel like we are simply adding security around this process that we have.
Exactly. I think it actually is going to make the people's voice heard a lot more because fraud can drown out the people's will. And now we're going to cut down on that tremendously.
That's great. Thank you for explaining that. So you've spoken a lot about foreign nationals funding ballot measures and ballot initiatives. And this issue is pretty significant, right? Why do we care in Arkansas? Is it happening in Arkansas? And then you and I had a press conference on one of these bills, and we're going to jump into that too. So first tell me, is it happening in Arkansas, or are people from outside of our country funding ballot measures in Arkansas?
So I think if I was to ask most people in this state, should we ban foreign billionaires from funding ballot initiatives here? The first thing that probably pops in your head is, well, has that ever happened? That probably never will happen. It's a good idea, but it doesn't matter. Except it has happened. And it's happening to states across the country. Whether or not you think we need a higher minimum wage, the Minimum Wage Initiated Act had over $1 million of funding through a dark money group that's funded by a Swiss billionaire. And that is indisputable. And when you think about that, that's scary. We don't know what is coming next, but we can't have something like that happen again. As well, we know that this dark money group, the 1630 Fund, funded by a Swiss billionaire, has spent millions upon millions of dollars on ballot initiatives in states as small as Arkansas. Last year, they didn't do it in Arkansas, but we have no reason to think that they wouldn't come for us.
And $1 million in Arkansas, it goes a long ways. So it's, $1 million in California is very, very different. But to come into some of these smaller states, you can go into Missouri, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and you could really make an impact and change the culture of a state when really the citizens weren't intending that culture to be changed.
Right. It's very easy. You're a Swiss billionaire. You have more money than sense, and you think for $2 million, I can buy a change in Arkansas's constitution. That might sound like a good idea to them. It sounds like a very bad idea to me and to you.
Agreed. So let's talk about HB 1837. You and I worked together on this bill for a long time. A long time we worked on this bill.
Long time.
But talk about kind of the key points of the bill and what this is helping us do. I think you already addressed some of it, but let's recap it.
Yeah, key points. One, if you are a foreign national, you cannot fund a ballot initiative in Arkansas. You need to be a U.S. citizen. You need to be someone who lives in America if you're going to invest in America's elections. And we've already had that for years for local, state, federal races, and we are closing the loophole on that. And then we're saying, hey, if you're giving $50,000, $20,000, $50 million to ballot initiative, you just need to sign a piece of paper that says, you know what, I'm not controlled by a foreign national. I'm not funded by a foreign national. It's basic common sense stuff that I think most Arkansans probably assumed we already did.
Yeah, and that threshold's $10,000, right? So grandma can give $100 and doesn't have to sign a piece of paper to certify anything. But if you're given $10,000, then we're just going to ask you to sign a piece of paper that says you're not getting money from a foreign national, which is pretty reasonable. And we're not stopping anyone from giving. People from Oklahoma and Tennessee can still give into Arkansas ballot measures, right? So anyone in America, just as long as you're an American citizen.
Yep.
Right? Perfect. And I really appreciate that. And as I recall, President Trump just signed an executive order basically echoing what you just did here in Arkansas.
They said it's a huge issue. Really what you did, Mindy, with your bill, they said President Trump said it's an issue that foreign nationals are funding our ballot initiatives on the state level. If you have a great constitutional idea and you're a French billionaire, maybe run it in France. We'll take care of Arkansas. You can stay over there. That's the message. It's about whether you're our allies or our enemies. That we can run our own constitution in Arkansas. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate your work on that. I appreciate just being such a bulldog. I know that you've talked a lot about just this ballot initiative process, and we talked about the security of it because I think you said you rated it a D when you looked at it, and I think hopefully as we come through this legislative cycle, maybe we can bump that grade up a little bit.
I agree. I think the core is, like I said, this is a real person who really signed their name, who really wants this. Yeah. If I didn't know if any of that was true and I didn't, then that's not great. That is not really acceptable. That's not what the people expect, and they're elected officials.
Yeah. And so you do other things besides just election integrity, right? You make sure that our elections run smoothly. You maintain our voter rolls. Talk about some of the other things that you've worked on besides just these ballot initiatives.
So the two things that I think about, the first thing when I wake up and the last thing when I go to bed, one is election security. I want us to be by far number one in the country, and I think we are easily on the road to doing that.
Agree.
And number two is real security. We have a police force of 60 people at the Capitol whose job is to keep the people who are coming to the Capitol safe. And whether it's a governor or whether it's a 16-year-old intern, if something happens, that's on me. I want to keep those people safe. We work on security with our great Capitol Police every single day, making improvements that, I'm not going to come and talk about publicly, but you should never feel as safe at your Capitol as you do right now. And it's only going to get better.
That's
well. Yep. So, yep, exactly.
Keep going. You're going to say something else. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. We have a business and commercial services office. Every single business in the state, they file a piece of paper with us, and it's a chance for us to say that we are, in the state government, we care about you. We are responsive to you. We are kind to you. We show you Southern hospitality. We are efficient, and every day we're moving towards those goals. And finally, we maintain the Capitol. This Capitol building, it is beautiful. It was given to us by a bunch of people who are no longer here, who have passed, but they left us a legacy, as so many of us are thankful for our parents and our grandparents for having done. And we make sure that it's as beautiful today as it was when it was built.
And it is a beautiful building. If you have not seen it, to me, it is a replica of the U.S. Capitol, and it is just absolutely gorgeous inside and out. And the grounds are stunning, absolutely stunning. And you maintain those monuments, too, that we have on the grounds?
Exactly. We have many monuments and we maintain them, make sure they're beautiful. I told a group of firefighters, as long as I'm your Secretary of State, we're going to have a good-looking firefighters memorial, because if we were to let that degrade, it tells you about our character and it sends a message we're not going to send to the world. We care about our emergency responders, our firefighters, our police.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we also have the Little Rock 9 monument there as well, which welcomes you as you kind of come into the,
beautiful
I forget
monument.
Which side that is.
So well done.
Yeah.
North.
North. I always have to think about it. Okay, so tell me about one of my favorite stories is the story of the traveler, the Arkansas traveler that we give to people when they come in to, they come in to speak, and we will give them a framed Arkansas traveler. Can you just tell us that story? Because that's kind of a fun story.
It is, it's a story about a man who's passing through Arkansas, and he goes, and in Arkansas, we're proud of our rural roots. And there were some people that, they welcomed him in, they entertained him, they gave him food, and he had a good experience in a culture that was very different than his. He wasn't from Arkansas, and in kind of honoring that, we have this certificate that's been going on for almost 100 years, the Arkansas Traveler. If you're not from Arkansas, we actually want you to come here. We want you to visit, and anyone who's an Arkansan can request a certificate to give you to say, like, you are now an ambassador of Arkansas, to tell people, hey, we're warm, we're friendly, and we appreciate you.
I love that. I just think it really does kind of encapsulate who Arkansans are, right? We are Southerners, but we're also fiercely independent, and we have very strong rural roots. And so I think the traveler certificate really encapsulates that. I love being able to give that when people come and speak. It's kind of a fun thing. Okay, so talk to me a little bit more, just in general, about public service. You've done it your whole career. What's kind of the toughest part of public service?
Yeah, the toughest part is that when you're opening yourself up to service, you're opening yourself up to criticism. And that the more responsibilities you have, the more opportunities you have to make a mistake, the more opportunities there will be to criticize you. And I think really the answer to that is here's the decision-making process I try to say. I'm trying to make a decision. Do I do something? I know some people will be angry because of it. I know some people will be happy because of it. That's tempting as well.
Yeah.
What would you do if no one was ever going to find out? What would you do if it's just the right thing? And then I think you do that thing regardless of how loud the noise is on one side or the other. And oftentimes the temptation to do something just because it's popular is as easy as doing something just because you're not doing something because it'll bring criticism. But instead, you have to focus on doing the right thing.
That is really good advice. You may actually have to come and speak to the freshman class every legislative session, because I think that is one of the toughest parts. I agree with you. Of public service is taking the noise that you hear from everybody and kind of pushing that aside and saying, what is the right thing to do here? What's the best for them, regardless of what special interest group is kind of, talking to you or whispering in your ear, or social media. Social media makes it very hard these days too, sometimes, to do what you think is best, because somebody's going to be mad and it's going to blow up, and you're like, but I still have to do the right thing. So I appreciate you saying that. That's
right. 99% of people in this state will never reach out to a government official one way or the other, but they just really trust you and they really want you to do the right thing. And you have to say you're going to do the right thing, even if, a small group is saying not to or to do it.
Yeah. That's really sound advice, especially from someone very young. So I appreciate that. Okay, so I want to wrap up just a little bit. So talk to me, just as you look over your career, is there a moment or an accomplishment that just stands out? And it could have been something that was successful or something that wasn't successful, but something that you're just tremendously proud of, or you're like, if I had one thing to tell you, this is the thing.
I think it's a leadership lesson from Governor Sanders when the Biden Title IX executive order came down, or the new rule. It said that states, you have to treat a man who says they're a woman in every single way you treat a real woman. You have to allow them to access showers, locker rooms, bathrooms from kindergarten through college. And if you don't, we are going to take away your funding, your education funding, which in our state is primarily for free or reduced school lunches. So they would remove the ability to provide that for kids. And, I was proud. I was able to give a really accurate legal analysis to the governor and say, I think we're going to win. But if we sue, we may lose, and we could lose $1 billion. And I kind of discussed the pros and cons, which is what anyone should do. And, what she said to her team was she wasn't interested in the pros and cons. She was interested in doing the right thing, and that we would make it work if we had to, but we weren't going to be sacrificing our women's spaces. And I think sometimes we get too caught up in the pros and cons when really we know what the right thing is.
Yeah, what a great story. it took a lot of strength and a lot of courage to stand up, because $1 billion is a significant portion of our state budget.
Yes. Yes.
So, to be willing to sacrifice that for the greater good, for what's right, is really a great story. And what an amazing example, too, for you to carry on. So, okay, one more question, and then I will let you go, because I know you're really busy and you've been kind to give me so much time today.
No, you're
So,
fine. Thank
as
you, Mindy.
Secretary of State, what change or initiative do you hope happens before you leave office? And is there a specific legacy that you're hoping to leave behind for Arkansans?
Easy.
Okay.
When I leave, I want us to be in national rankings, #1, the most secure elections in the country. That's what I want. I think we're going to get there.
That's great. That was easy. And I
Yeah.
think we will get there under your leadership. You really have shown, just in the 3.5 months that you have been in office, you have really shown strong leadership and strong courage to just barrel through and say, these are the right things to do and we're going to make it happen. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the support that you've just given me as a legislator.
We hit the gas pedal hard.
Yeah,
from day
yes,
one.
you did. Yes, you did. Well, Secretary, thank you so much for your time today. I look forward to continuing to work with you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Mindy. You're the best. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you have enjoyed listening to Secretary Cole Jester. He is a young man who has just hit the ground running, and he has done so much in such a short period of time. He has been Secretary of State for just over 3 months now, and he has already made a tremendous difference. You heard him talk about our election security, election integrity, and the things that he has done to try and make our election secure, both from a in-person voting as well as an absentee voting, and making sure that there's fraud is not happening and cleaning up those voter rolls. And he talked a lot about the ballot initiatives that have been going through the legislature this year. Some of them are a little controversial, and people feel like maybe their voice is being cut out of the process. And I think the secretary did a good job of defending those pieces of legislation to say we are trying to prevent fraud, but we in no way want to stop the process of letting citizens speak. It is something in Arkansas, our motto is the people rule. And so I think it's really important that we continue to let the people's voice be heard. And I think you heard that from Secretary Jester, that is his goal, just making sure that it is the people who are indeed speaking and not fraud coming through. We talked a lot about House Bill 1837, which is a bill that I ran, and I was so honored to be able to run that with Secretary Jester's help, and really closing that loophole on foreign nationals coming in and funding our ballot initiatives. There is no reason from anyone outside of our country to be putting money into changing the Arkansas Constitution. And so hopefully this will get through the legislation and get signed, and we'll close down that loophole as well. And then talk just a little bit about his leadership and some of the experience he's had in public service. And I think you heard him say that one of the most important things to him is that you just do the right thing because it's the right thing. And regardless if it makes people happy or makes people unhappy, he has a goal of getting the right thing done. And I think that's a great leadership lesson. And finally, his main goal is to make sure that we are the #1 state for election integrity going forward. And I feel pretty confident that he will get us there. So thank you again for joining me today on In the Arena. Look forward to seeing you next week.